Hey, so welcome to section 2.05, where we are going to be converting units. Now, the first thing that this module discusses is kind of which unit is best for a particular measurement. So, for example, there's a lot of different ways to describe a distance, right? You can use inches, centimeters, meters, miles, kilometers. There's so many different ways to describe distance. But which unit is best for a particular distance? So for example, if I wanted to describe, how far away my home is from the nearest grocery store, would I want to describe that in feet? Would I want to describe that in inches? Or would I want to describe that in miles? Right? So I think for a lot of us, it'd be probably miles, maybe half a mile or 3 miles, right? But you wouldn't want to tell somebody you're 3,900 feet from a grocery store, right? You wouldn't want to use that unit of measure. So the first part of this is kind of discussing, just make sure you understand what the units really relate to. Because I think a lot of times especially for metric system, a lot of us kind of forget metric units like centimeters and kilometers. So you really want to wrap your head around how big a certain or a particular unit is. So for the length of a smartphone, what unit would be better to measure the length of a smartphone? Would you want to use centimeters or kilometers? Now, centimeters are sort of an equivalent to inches for the metric system, and kilometers is sort of the mile equivalent in the metric system. So obviously, we wouldn't want to measure the length of our smartphone in kilometers because that's essentially like measuring things in miles. But again, towards the metric system. So centimeters is about the length of a fingertip or your fingernail, maybe smaller than that. So centimeters is a good unit to measure smartphones. A smartphone would probably be about 12 centimeters according to this, whereas a smartphone would be 0.00012 kilometers. So you can clearly tell which unit is better to use in describing the length of a smartphone. What about the weight of an elephant? Weight of an elephant, would you want to use ounces? Probably not. An elephant's really, really heavy. So it's 144,000 ounces. But no one wants to really describe an elephant's weight in that big of a number. So we would go with tons. An elephant is 4.5 tons. Sometimes you can go with pounds. Of course, there's nothing wrong with pounds. It's very typical when describing weight. But again, there are some measures that are maybe even a little bit better than that. The volume of a bowl. So volume, I think, particularly gets a lot of us. Would you want to measure a bowl in cups or gallons? Now, when I think of gallons, I think of that giant jug of milk, right? That's kind of in my head how I kind of imagine how big a gallon is. I know that's way bigger than a bowl, so I'd probably go with cups here. A cup, your bowl is about 2 cups in volume, whereas a bowl in gallons is 0.125 gallons. So again, cups is a slightly better unit to measure that with. And then, of course, the distance of the Andromeda galaxy. Would you want to use feet or light years? Considering we're talking about a galaxy here, light years is definitely the way to go. Light years, by the way, is a measure of distance. It's not a measure of time, for those that are curious. And just to go on a slight tangent, a light year is the distance that the speed of light will travel over the course of 1 year. So if you turn a flashlight on, you just aim it up at the sky, assume that light carried on forever not forever, but assume that light stream carried on for 1 year. The distance that light goes is 1 light year. So it is a distance, but it's a very interesting unit of distance, I will say. But yeah, for sure. And even in light years, it's still a huge number. 2,200,000 light years wide. But feet is obviously way, way bigger. I don't even know what number that is. 68 gazillion, bazillion, whatever, right? Definitely we don't want to use feet, but I mean, you could. All right. Now, another thing to pay attention to is kind of what your unit represents. So, for example, when you talk about area, everyone knows area formula of length times width. Area, because it's a multiple length times width, you would represent it in feet squared if you're using the units of feet, of course. If you're using miles, then it would be miles squared. If it was meters, then it would be meters squared. And so the reason for this, the reason why you'd have to say feet squared, meters squared, whatever for area is, well, let's just say I described area. Well, that seems to be broken. That's okay. If you want to describe area in regular feet, that doesn't cut it, because if I want to say something, area is 12 feet, not 12 feet squared, 12 feet is just a linear measurement of, 12 feet long. Just like a yardstick or a ruler or something, or a measuring tape could measure out. But feet squared takes that distance and creates it in a two-dimensional area. So now you've got 12 square feet in here, right? So it takes it from a linear, a one-dimensional scale into a two-dimensional scale. And then when you want to really branch out and start doing volume, you talk about things cubed, which brings it into a third dimensional scale. So imagine, we're going 3D here, right? How that scale would look. So then you're taking that and making it all a bunch of cubes. So feet squared measures area, because typically area is a two-dimensional plane. When you're talking about your yard is an area. It's a level of ground. It's flat in its surface, right? If I'm measuring the volume of space in a room is three-dimensional. So you would use units cubed, okay, or to the third power, feet cubed, or meters cubed, things like that. So that's why it's very important when we discuss our units, whether we put at the end of it feet squared or feet cubed or whatever the case may be, if you're pertaining to volume or area or etc. To move on to page 2. Page 2 is when we start to convert units. You can watch this video here. It's nice, very lovely video. Let's just get into the explore part, shall we? So if we want to convert gallons to fluid ounces, for a lot of us, we might not know right off the top of our head what the gallons to fluid ounces conversion is. Now, of course, we do have the access of Google, which is nice, which tells us that 1 gallon is 128 fluid ounces. Now, of course, because Google is super friendly, we could just type in our answers, change these numbers and get what we want. But of course, you're going to still need to be able to do these by hand, and it's not too tricky. Okay, but if you want to convert gallons to fluid ounces, let's say I have something that's 5 gallons, right? If I have something that's 5 gallons, and now here's the important part about converting units, especially when you have to convert multiple units, which I think is what we're going to see either later on that second page or moving on to the third page, is being able to cancel out the same unit. So for example, I'm converting the 5 gallons to some number of fluid ounces, right? That's my goal. And I spelled it wrong. I don't know why I put an N there. I guess I was thinking gallons still. All right, fluid ounces. Now, I know that 1 gallon is equal to 128 fluid ounces. Okay? So when I'm trying to convert 5 gallons into fluid ounces, I'm going to pick 5 gallons and I'm going to multiply it by that ratio of 128 fluid ounces to 1 gallon. But the question is, should I put 128 over 1, or should I really multiply it by 1 over 128? So should I have it as 1 gallon to 128 fluid ounces, or should I reverse it and say 128 fluid ounces to 1 gallon? And the answer is you're going to cancel out the unit you started with. And the only way to cancel something out is if they're on opposite sides of your fraction. So if gallons is up here, I want the gallon to be at the bottom so that the gallons on the top can cancel out the gallons on the bottom, right? You know the idea of canceling things out, right? If you had, for example, 5 times 2 divided by 5, you understand that the 5 on top cancels with the 5 on bottom, and the answer is simply just 2. That's how this works, is we're looking to cancel out these units. So whichever unit you want to get rid of, you want to throw it onto the opposite side, in this case, the bottom of your fraction, in order to cancel it out. So you would do essentially 5 times 128 to get your answer. And 5 times 128 is, as Google told us earlier, 640. And we'll talk a lot more about these conversions moving forward. If you want to convert fluid ounces to gallons, again, you can do this in Google. So you can go fluid ounces to gallons, right? And it'll tell you the conversion rate. And we're going to use that conversion right here, okay? 1 fluid ounces equal to 0.007812 gallons. And that's what they have. Now, if I have, again, you could see the math already worked out there, but if I had 100 fluid ounces and I want to convert it into gallons, right, then I'm going to multiply this by that ratio. Now, since I have fluid ounces I'm starting with, I want to cancel fluid ounces out, then I'm going to put the fluid ounces number here on the bottom. So 1 fluid ounce was equivalent to, as the conversion rate tells us, 0.007, I forget the whole number, 78125. 78125.